China is Zimbabwe's biggest foreign investor. President Xi and Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe agreed on 10 deals to boost health, energy, and infrastructure. Joining me now to discuss the significance of Xi's visit is Dali Yang, political science professor at the University of Chicago. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome.
First of all, how important is this visit? It's President Xi Jinping's first time in Zimbabwe. It's been decades since the Chinese president last visited.
Yeah, I think it certainly sends a very strong signal that President Xi is committed to building and strengthening the relationship with Africa. In fact, this is the first time that the China-Africa summit will be held in Africa. So the visit to Zimbabwe is only the first stop. In fact, it does also raise various questions, even though there are a lot of deals that are being signed with Zimbabwe. But overall, though, China is extremely committed to building those relations with Africa. This is a relationship that goes back decades, and China has invested significantly over time and is beginning to reap benefits from those kind of investments.
Want to get to that summit in just a moment, but first, mining, agriculture, infrastructure, some big deals being signed with Zimbabwe. But with that country's faltering economy, how can China be assured that their investments are safe? Should there be some guarantees?
Well, I think that raises very interesting questions. Of course, China itself has only had a development experience of emerging from poverty in the last 30 years. So China actually has a lot of experience in dealing with uncertainties. Many of the firms that are signing those deals probably are assessing very carefully. But nonetheless, we do have a situation where Zimbabwe recently, for example, had its land reform. So there are questions of ownership. There are also issues in terms of the political stability of Zimbabwe because Mr. Mugabe, for example, is 92 years old, and he's not going to be around forever. So the companies that are signing those deals will have to look carefully. In certain cases, I assume that they have built-in safeguard mechanisms in terms of building the infrastructure. And also the banks that are offering the loans may help as well in terms of guaranteeing or having some sort of insurance for the kind of loans. But overall, though, there's no guarantee that every project that are being signed actually will be implemented. But nonetheless, $1 billion for this economy is a significant number. I do think actually a lot will happen, and therefore China is preparing and playing a long game in Zimbabwe.
Yes, a huge number indeed. Going back to that first China-Africa summit with other leaders taking place in South Africa, what does it say about the relationship that China wants to have with the African continent? What are some of the expectations for the summit, or what are some of the things that you think we should look for?
Well, I think actually it's sort of unlike in the past. In the past, that summit was held in Beijing. In fact, China would help many of the leaders to come to Beijing. This time, however, they are meeting in South Africa. And in this case, actually, it really shows the kind of commitment that President Xi is coming to Africa to reach out to the region. And in fact, this is the right time because China itself has slowed down. Many Chinese companies are looking for opportunities around the world. In fact, there are more than 2 million Chinese who are roaming and have built businesses around the region in the continent. So in that sense, actually, this is a very nice moment for the reinforcement of this relationship. China also has become much more mature. Many Chinese companies initially came to Africa thinking that, we can treat the workers, do things to the environment just as we did in China, which was not a very good sign. And of course, they encountered many problems, whether in mining or other places. And they have gradually learned, partly under criticism from the media and from NGOs and so on. So I think this is a very good moment for China to take stock of the situation, but at the same time to build on the foundations that have been laid.